Hello, everybody. I'm Angie Callan, host of No More Mondays, here with your double shot of midweek momentum to help you push through that week. Today, we are talking to Susie Tomenchok about negotiations and reframing our perspective on them. And instead of defining a negotiation, which, by the way, most things in life are, as a win lose situation, we think about it as an opportunity to connect and build trust. Susie's take is going to help you rethink how you approach your next negotiation, and I'm excited for you to learn from her today. I want to start with like a fact and fiction situation here.
Okay.
How true is this notion really that everything is a negotiation? Is there truth to that matter? Is that just like an overused phrase at this point in society?
It's so funny because I just had a friend today remind me that after she got to know me and we had these conversations, she goes, I always knew that negotiation was in my everyday, but it is like really in our everyday conversations. And I get really energized and passionate about that idea because it is about communication, it's about connection, it's about trust. And really, negotiation was first taught in law school in the 70s. And that was about the win-lose. That's where win-lose came from. And then through the 80s, business schools started adopting the strategies around negotiation. And now when you look at everything that's written on it, it's all around EQ and how to connect. And it's about the relationship. And it really is truly something that you need to work out with somebody else. Because listen, we all have a different position. We all see the world through a different orientation. And so just given that reality, every discussion is a negotiation.
I think that's such an important, and I feel like let's stop making the word negotiation a dirty word.
Totally.
Thank you win loss of the 70s, which we're gonna talk about, because I think if you can shed that mentality, it really does become a discussion with the attempts to find common ground.
That's exactly right. And I've interviewed men and women who negotiate for a living and that don't negotiate for a living, but they're executives. And I found it fascinating. And this is my own research, so it's not like I'm going to give you the exact stat, but a lot of the men would say, "Oh, I negotiate all the time with my boss," where the women would look at it and go, "Yeah, that's this situation." It's like this laminated list that people believe. And I think that we should use that word more liberally. Because if I say to you, if you and I are colleagues in a corporation, Angie, and I say, "Hey, Angie, you know what? Let's sit down and let's negotiate our priorities." When you think about that, what I'm saying is I'm interested in understanding what your priorities are and how can we blend those together. It's a powerful word.
It's such a mindset shift around this idea that immediately, my mom listens to every one of these podcasts. So, mom, I'm going to
Hi,
talk about
mom.
dad for a second. When I think about negotiations, I think about the off the charts level of my dad's blood pressure anytime we needed to go buy a new car when we were a kid.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we think
Yeah.
about. And so when you sit down and say, hey, let's negotiate priorities, people bristle, right? The hair on the back of our head stands up, because it is this word that has a connotation, when we really have the ability to shift our mindset around this topic and think about it as an effort in communicating with somebody and finding the commonality. So, how do we start shifting that mindset and turning negotiation into something that just happens instead of a situation that we've got to get stressed about?
Yeah, and I do think it is getting comfortable with that word, and I think you hit on it. We all have a different relationship with it. It all evokes something from our past, whether we felt manipulated, we felt taken advantage of, or we saw that through others. Because really, at the end of the day, a negotiation is a high stakes situation. And so I like to tell people to start looking at their week or just in their regular day to day. What is high stakes to you? And what that is what evokes emotion that it feels a little difficult to you. And it could be as simple as starting a difficult conversation with somebody that you know is going to feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And it could be very simple. If my daughter, I helped her move and she promised to buy me and my boyfriend, this is a fictitious story. She volunteered to buy pizza for my boyfriend, and this was over a year ago, and she hasn't. Well, to me, going to her now, she works for a living, she makes good money, but to say, "You never bought that pizza," that feels really high stakes for me.
When it's not even on her
Not even
radar.
on her radar. And so to be okay with, why is this high stakes for me? What is causing that? It could be, I used to work with a guy, his name was Dan, and I didn't have high trust with him. So when Dan was in a meeting with me, I didn't share as openly as I did when Dan wasn't there. So that meeting was high stakes for me because Dan was there. So just understanding that, it's not an excuse, but being able to go, this is high stakes for me. Let me unpack that a little bit for myself. Why is that?
Ah, so there's a perspective there. And we all have one. We all have a lens. We all have experiences that have colored that
Mhm,
lens, and going into a negotiation,
mhm,
because that's what we think about, heightens those experiences, or intensifies the lens and the perspective that we bring to it. And oftentimes it sounds like, this idea of like not being able to think about the quote unquote other side, which is tricky language for what we're talking about here, but um being able to put yourself in those shoes can
mhm,
shift things a little bit, or maybe help you back off the intensity that it feels because of your specific
mhm.
perspective.
Absolutely. Harvard says if you take 30 seconds before you walk into a negotiation and consider the interest of the other party, you will have measurably better results. Think about that. If you're going into a meeting that you're really stressed about and you take 30 seconds to consider, to your point, flipping yourself into the chair of the other person, you create an empathetic lens a little bit more. You might pick the right words, you might start in the right place. And that it's a shift.
It almost changes the stakes in my mind, because I'm envisioning, I don't know why the show Succession just popped into my head, right? The hardball aggressive
Yeah,
Kendall's out outside the boardroom smacking himself and getting himself all amped up to go win a negotiation, versus how can I go in here and create symbiosis instead of a mutually exclusive win-loss environment.
exactly. That's exactly right. And they say emotion is not a good strategy because it clouds our ability to think. And when you're clouded, you focus on what you're interested in, which then inhibits your creativity. And
Yep.
we don't want the other person to get emotional either because we want them to be clear-headed. Because when both parties are clear-headed and they practice reciprocity and they're showing collaboration, you're more likely to continue to do that. But as soon as you focus on your own interests, as soon as you do that, guess what the other side's going to do? Focus on theirs.